I solemnly swear that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Good morning, everybody. Ron from The Truth About Addiction. Welcome. Very excited today. I've got a beautiful lady, an accomplished author, which is something that I'm trying to be at the moment, and somebody who does a lot of help and a lot of good for other people. And for me, that's gangster. You know, people want to talk about gangsters. You know, this is the gangster, Kerrie Atherton. Please tell us your story, darling.
Oh, thank you, Ron. Great to be here.
No, my pleasure. Please tell us, what's the Kerrie Atherton story, your upbringing, life, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, whatever, and your light bulb moment. I just see behind you the light bulb moment, you know, your stories of hope. You know, I know that you're an author. I know that you write really good stuff, and I also know that you do a lot of stuff for other people. You know, you're a good human being, and to me, that's what this whole podcast is about, is trying to help people. And in helping others, we help ourselves, you know.
Thank you, Ron. Yeah, well, it's there's a lot to my story, but we've got a bit of time, so that's good. But I guess, you know, today, the thing that's, if we reverse from I'll go to the beginning in a minute, but I guess the thing today is that I lived in a victim mentality for so many years that today I have a victor mentality. And having a victor mentality means that we can be our true authentic self and not worry about what other people think, and get out there and just live our life to help other people find hope. And I guess that's the thing that's most important to me, because I was so hopeless for so long.
Yeah, beautiful.
It's really interesting because as you know, I've been sober for 41 years. And I think what is the most interesting thing about my journey is the distance from my last drink is so far away. It's very hard for me to kind of remember a lot. And as alcoholics and addicts, you know, we block a lot of the stuff out from our drinking days as well. And I was talking about this a couple of months ago. I think I wrote a post or something, but I was having these, you know, flashbacks still today of things that happened in my drinking days. And we're talking like a long time ago. And I actually wrote this post, and I came up with this thing. And it is that for a recovering alcoholic or addict, life becomes like an unsolved jigsaw puzzle, one of which we will never be able to put all the pieces back together again. But in that case, we can make a new beautiful jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
But it is like that, isn't it? You know, we often, you know, in sobriety, search for a lot of answers about the past, you know, because human nature is we have to have a resolution. But the thing that I've had to learn to be okay with is not having a resolution about a lot of things. And acceptance, you know, comes into that, which is right through the steps. And the counselling clients that I counsel, you know, we talk a lot about acceptance, because there's a lot of people that have been wronged by other people, as is part of my story. And there is no resolution. You can't get that person to apologise. Yep. You may not be able to face that person again head on and go, hey, this is what you did to me. So it's coming to an acceptance and being able to step out of the past, because wherever we live in the past, we're stuck. We'll never be able to move into the future. And so, yeah, so my story started growing up in Lane Cove on a place called River Road, which was like a 4-lane highway back then.
Yeah, I know.
And yeah, I remember having dreams, you know, of rally cars just meow, meow, you know, in the daytime when I was trying to have a sleep. That was all I could hear was cars, you know. And my dad was the child of 2 alcoholic parents, and his mum died of a drug and alcohol overdose in her late 40s. And the father was a famous musician, like he ran the Tivoli in Sydney and wrote all the music and was the conductor and the violinist, and so out all the time at night. And his mother was extremely violent. And, you know, he's told me stories about when the dad would come home as a child, he'd have my dad out on the veranda and they would have a piece of string on the going from one side of the room to the other, and they had pots and pans strung up on it. And that was so when the mother got up drunk and ran into them, that was their warning sign to get up and get out, because she would come out with knives. And so my dad's upbringing, he would come home from school as a kid and often his mum would be passed out, lying in a pool of blood. He couldn't tell me how many times he had to call the ambulance as a child when he got home from school, put his mum in the ambulance. And as a result of that, he developed severe PTSD and agoraphobia because he was locked in cupboards by his dad to keep him safe from his mum, and just lived in, you know, terror with high anxiety, you know, his entire life. But he drank and stopped drinking at 22 after he put his fist through a moving train window, nearly bled to death on the train. And often people will repeat the patterns of the past and what's been modelled to them, but in rare occasions where the trauma has been so great, those people will go on to determine that they're going to do things differently. And my dad was one of those rare people. He didn't ever want to put us through what he went through. So he got sober at 22 and then met my mum, and my mum was an alcoholic. And I mean, I've got a lot of happy memories of my childhood, but the thing that really stands out for me is the feeling of never fitting in and feeling like a raw exposed nerve. Even, you know, going to preschool for the first day, I just had this intense paranoia and felt like every eye was on me all the time, like for a lot of my life and a lot of my drinking days and the days after that. And it was just this hypersensitivity to thinking that people were staring about me, talking about me, and I just felt so anxious, socially anxious, you know, a lot of the time. And when I was 7, I had a series of traumatic events start to happen. And this really framed up for me, you know, terrible fear setting in. And one was witnessing my mum being electrocuted. She did come back to life, but her whole life flashed before her eyes, and she actually did die, you know, that day. But it was the most terrifying sight as I asked my mum for my favourite purple dress one afternoon and saw her shaking violently behind the washing machine and screaming. And that day, trauma set in. And in the rooms of AA, where I have been going for years, we talk about our story, but a lot of the time the trauma that happened before the addiction is not talked about. And I really want to talk about this stuff today because it is stuff that a lot of people bury, and it will come out eventually. And I counsel so many people that are in their, you know, their middle age, and that's when they choose to bring the trauma out. But if we can bring it out and try and speak to somebody and deal with those hard things earlier on, we could go on to have a much more peaceful and settled life. Then had another traumatic event not long after that, where my little brother's best friend, who was 4, was run over by a semi-trailer on our road and killed. And Mum and Dad took us to the funeral, and that was just devastating. And then his dad passed away 1.5 years after that of cancer. And so I had this terrible fear of losing people close to me set in then. And Then when I was 9, we were on holidays, and I was swinging on the swings in the park, and this girl said to me, "Oh, see that man over there? His name's Max. He's a friend of mine." And instantly I had this terrible feeling that this was a really bad person. And I said, "Don't introduce me to him. I don't want to know him." And then the next day, it was my brother's birthday, and I was standing in the carport of the holiday cabins at Port Macquarie. And when you arrived there, we didn't have credit cards as we do today. So you gave your name, address, phone number. And I'm standing in the carport looking on a rainy day for what we might be able to do for my brother's birthday to make his day special. And I felt something lurking behind me. And I turned around, and he was this man. And he was exposing himself to me and trying to ask me to do things to him and trying to do some stuff to me. And I was just frozen. I was absolutely terrified. And there must have been a noise or something, because all of a sudden he left, and he told me not to tell anyone. And I went in and told my parents straight away. And they took me to the police, but the police were like, "Oh, there's not much we can do. It's, your 9-year-old daughter's word against the perpetrator." And they kind of led on that it was the person that they knew that had done this before. And it ended up being the son of the owner of the holiday cabins, the adult son of the owner of the holiday cabins. So they said, "Take your daughter home and just forget all about it." Well, going home with me that day was absolute, immense shame, terrifying fear, because we'd been to the police and this person knew where I lived. And I was convinced that he was going to track me down and kill me. And so the girl that went on holidays never came home. A different girl came home. And I was being bullied at school as well at the same time. And so I was terrified to go to school, terrified at home. Most people have a safe haven at one or the other. I didn't have a safe haven anywhere. I was really close to my parents, and my mum was still drinking at this stage, and she had bipolar. So I had a lot of emotional stuff going on there, and I could never predict the atmosphere. So always living in that, it's fight, flight, freeze, and appease. But I was living in freeze, my entire childhood. And then Mum and Dad took me to a psychiatrist when I was 10, because I collapsed under the bed and I just couldn't stop crying, and I'd had a breakdown. And the psychiatrist prescribed me anti-anxiety medication and antidepressants. And that was, to me then, like an absolute gift out of my absolute life of fear and terror. So I was just terrified of people, terrified of being at home, terrified of going to school. The one thing that my dad did for me, which also, I think really saved me, was he got me piano lessons when I was 7. And he was a musician as well, a jazz musician in Sydney. And so we jammed together. And that was just so amazing, because I had an interest. I had something that I could escape to. And the piano was my best friend. It was something that could never reject me, something that I could pour my emotions out onto, and something that I could just escape in. So with those two things, I went on to become addicted to that medication. And then when I was 15, I picked up my first drink of alcohol, and that was magical. And I don't even like to say that, because I can't meditate on that for longer than a second today, Ron.
Yeah.
That's the danger zone. So the thoughts come in, and we can't help what comes into our head, but what we can do is help. We can help what we do with those thoughts. So chop that out very quickly, but it coloured me in, took away all the fears, all the anxiety, And I thought, I think I can actually do life with alcohol. I'd been really, really depressed in the year leading up to that. And at 13 and 14, I had often thought about dying. And I used to go to sleep at night and wish that I wouldn't wake up in the morning. And then I'd wake up to another day and I didn't know how I was going to get through that day. Even then on the pills, you know, the pills had started to lose their effect to a certain extent. So picked up my first drink and I just felt like I had an ally, I had a best friend, but I couldn't stop drinking at one drink. My first drink was from a cask of wine that my brothers had flogged across the road and hidden under a caravan in the middle of summer. And it was a boiling hot cask of wine, and I drank the whole lot. And I was really violently ill, but I was going back for more.
Yeah.
And then, you know, my mum had since got sober. And so having two alcoholic parents and all of their friends in AA, my drinking really didn't stand much of a chance. But I was a rebel. And I was like, be buggered if I'm giving up now. You know, I've only just got started. Let the party begin. And the party didn't last very long. It was tragedy, trauma, right from the get-go. I just turned into an absolute, you know, I turned into a real bitch, you know, and I don't like that word. But from the person that I was before I drank to the person that I became so quickly after I started drinking. And when I was on the alcohol, I became violent, aggressive. You know, I could take on the world. I had, you know, the confidence of, you know, a rock star. I literally would dance on the tables. I'd try and take girls on in fights in the toilets, and I was that just wasn't the person that I was when I was sober. Had a lot of damaging relationships. And then when I was 17, in this event, and I'm going to give a trigger warning now. I've already talked about sexual abuse, but I'm talking about rape now. And this is something that a lot of people who have gone through addictions will be able to identify with. But this event really changed my life. It was, it was something that, out of everything else that happened to me, really impacted me the most, I think. And it was just the lack of regard for my human life that this person took away. And I was out on I'd been on one date with this person before, and I was out on a second date. And they brought alcohol along to the drive-in, which was where we were. And then that night, you know, tried to get it on with me, and I'm like, no, I'm not interested. And then he proceeded to tell me what he was going to do, and then drove me out to a deserted place beside the Macquarie University at 1 o'clock in the morning, and just, you know, had his way with me. And he was about 6'3". There was nothing I could do. I just felt totally helpless, just so degraded. And then I cried all the way home. He actually did drop me home, didn't leave me there. And then opened the door and said, now get out, like I was just a piece of human garbage. And I remember going into the shower and just washing myself for hours, you know, and I was just so disgusted that someone could treat me like that. But what did I do? I did nothing. There was no justice when I was 9. Why would there be any justice now? I told nobody, and I lived with this terrible shame, you know. It's rape victims carry a shame that is never theirs to carry. And I carried that shame right into to when I was 50 years old. And I think that's something that really cuts me up. You know, I haven't cried about this for, I don't know, forever, but because I felt it really ripped my self-esteem apart, and always made me feel like I was less than. And shame is a killer. If we don't get shame out of the cupboard, it destroys us. You know, it stops us from being truly connected to other people, because we feel like we're hiding something all the time. And if people really knew about us, what would they think? So we put barriers up, and we don't really truly connect with other people. And I never felt worthy to connect with other people properly. Anyway, 18 came. I'd been in another abusive relationship. The relationships just got worse and worse from that point. And then I ended up meeting this guy who I had met in Alateen, and I really did like him for a couple of years, but we got together and we were both at the height of our alcoholism. And he was in the army and probably had a lot of post-traumatic stress himself. And we went on holidays, and in the holiday waiting room, he just didn't like something I said, so he punched me in front of the families that were sitting there. And there'd been other things that he'd done to me as well, and that was like the last straw. And I came back from that holiday, and I'm going to give a suicide trigger warning now. And I woke up a couple of mornings later and I had no hope left whatsoever. And I planned to end my life that day. And then just then I heard a loud voice say, "Don't do it. If you hang on, you'll find happiness one day." And I'd grown up with a faith. My dad used to take me to church when I was younger, but I just felt so far away from God or a higher power or anything. But I just really believed that that was God's voice that day. And instead I rang up Alcoholics Anonymous, and that was my last. I knew Alcoholics Anonymous was my last stop. And I thought, I'll give this a go. And if it doesn't work, you know, plan B. But I'd been in the rooms of AA from 16 because my mum and dad used to take me to meetings with them because they were convinced I was an alcoholic. And when I used to sit in the rooms, I'd see people that were as old as me and older, and they would be pointing at me and they'd go, "I wish I found this program when I was your age, because if I did, I wouldn't have lost my family. I wouldn't have killed that person. I wouldn't have lost my marriage. I wouldn't have lost my house, you know, and I wouldn't have lost my kids." And all these things, I couldn't get them out of my head. And I decided at that age, after declining so far in my addictions only after a year, that I would have an insurance policy going wrong. And that was, they said in AA all the time, if you're an alcoholic and keep coming to these meetings and you don't get AA, AA will get you. And I'm like, right, I'm going to go to the meetings every now and then. And the insurance policy was that I'm going to keep drinking. And if I truly am an alcoholic, AA is going to get me. I didn't go often, but then when I was 18, desperate as, it got me. Yeah. And I haven't had a drink or a mood-changing pill since that day. Wow. And it's been an incredible journey. It's been a long journey. And like I said, you know, it's hard to kind of remember back to those early days, but I never want to forget them, because the day I forget those early days is the day that I will think it's all right to pick up a drink again. But something that I do remember is that I actually have left out a very important piece of this puzzle. The day that I got sober, they said in AA, don't get involved with somebody in the program. And there was a guy that had been sober for 3 years, and he, you know, took me under his wing. Oh, how nice of him. And I got involved with him from day one. And I always, though that was part of my addiction, I never felt complete unless I had a relationship. To me, if I didn't have a relationship, that meant I was worthless. And it didn't matter who that was, as long as it was someone that I thought loved me, I would settle for whoever. And so I went with this person who treated me like a princess for 6 months, and then we moved in together, and then the abuse started. So I was trying to stay sober, do the program with an aggressive, abusive, recovering alcoholic, and I became suicidal again in that time. I just felt so trapped. I just didn't know where to turn. But I never picked up a drink. And I got out of there after 3 years, the day he'd smashed everything I owned and screamed at me for days on end, you know, every single day. And I would walk out of the unit block, and it was one of those ones where it's like a U shape, and you've got units all around here, and everyone's got their blinds. And every time I would walk out, everyone's blinds would go up, and they were all staring because they knew obviously what was going on behind closed doors. But he'd cut me off from my family and all my friends, so I had nowhere to turn, and everyone in AA thought that he was like an absolute guru. Anyway, I got out the day that he put his hand up to hit me across the head, and I never went back. I prayed that I would never see him again, and I have never laid eyes on him to this day. And 6 months later, I met another person who had the same name and was the type of person that I always wanted to end up with but didn't think I deserved. And we've been married for 36 years now. So he doesn't understand me as an alcoholic. Like, he's very normal and stable, you know, like emotionally flatlined almost. And when he met me, I was an emotional nutcase. I'd come out of that relationship so damaged. I was filled with anger, full of jealousy, full of fear, and I was actually so obsessed thinking that my new boyfriend was going to meet someone else and leave me, because that's this other guy was obsessed with other women while he was with me. And this is something important that never gets talked about, and I'm talking about it today: jealousy. And I actually became aggressive and violent with my new partner because of the frustration and rage of what had happened to me in the last relationship. And fortunately, I was able to get help for that because I just felt like I was totally out of control. And this was when I was 3 years sober. So I remember falling to my knees on the ground one day in our unit after a couple of years, and I knew that I was so out of control, and that if something didn't change, it was really going to be bad news. I probably would drink again. And I just was on all, like, you know, on my knees, and I just said, God, I need help. I need you to take these emotional problems away from me. I don't want to be sober and live with these emotional problems. And I think what is the hardest thing for people in the early days of recovery is dealing with emotions, because when we're drinking and drugging, we never deal with emotions. We just keep putting something in, pushing the emotions further down. And all the people that I counsel, once they've got sober, they're like, I'm having these terrible emotions. This is awful. I'm feeling so sad and so angry. And I'm like, that's normal. That's good. For the first time in your life, you're experiencing emotions. And you have to walk through that stuff to get on the road of recovery. And after I said that prayer, something started to change. And I think that I had really put the steps into action then with that prayer that day. And I decided I felt a leading to come up with this plan to give my husband the benefit of the doubt. And if I thought that he was staring at someone else or talking to someone else, to choose to believe that that wasn't true, and that what he told me was the truth. So the instant those old tapes used to come in, he's going to leave me, I'm not good enough, I would instantly tell myself another story. No, he's told me that that's not the case. I'm going to choose to believe this. And so that became my pattern of thought. And eventually the jealousy left me. And eventually the rage left. And I wasn't aggressive anymore towards him. I didn't hit him over the back. And that was what I used to do, you know, just hit him and whack into him. And eventually I did start to change. My emotions started to level out. And I think I was sharing with you before, I cried every single day. And I was always also like, please, can there be a day when I just don't cry anymore? And today I can go for, you know, weeks without crying. And it's just so freeing, because back then I thought I was going to be trapped in that mirage of negative emotions forever. But one day at a time, Ron, the journey of sobriety just, you know, really got better and better. And all the things that people out there take for granted in the world, like finding a partner, getting a job, getting a license. I got my license when I was 26. And I'm so grateful that I didn't get it before then, because I know that I would have drank and drive and probably killed someone. Getting a house, you know, paying a mortgage, getting up, having a shower, being able to go out and help someone, have kids. And now I have 2 beautiful granddaughters. And all of these things that people that haven't battled with addictions just take for granted are just such great gifts that I can't even, you know, explain. When I first got sober, because as we do, I just had the poor me's, you know, I was shaking the whole time, and poor me, why has my life been messed up, and why this, why that? And there was a guy in a wheelchair with no legs. Every time I would get off the ferry, I would see him. And I would think, there, but for the grace of God, go I. And that seeing him every single morning just gave me such a feeling of gratitude for having 2 legs and being able to get off the ferry and walk. And it just, you know, always made me think there's always somebody worse off. And look for the blessings in my life, look for what I can be grateful for. And gratitude has become such a massive part of my recovery. And that's the end of the first story. There's a whole nother story of overcoming 17 years of grief after losing my mum to cancer, and all the family above me just all wiped out in a short space of time, and my husband becoming seriously ill and not having to give up, and having to give up his job, and not knowing, you know, what was going to happen with him, and being in a high-speed car accident in the middle of all that, leaving my job on stress leave because I was being bullied at work. So many things, you know, this is around 6 years ago, this all came to a head, all this grief, because I was treading water from the day my mum got diagnosed with cancer. And it was just, I felt like it was a tsunami trauma trigger trail. And around 6 years ago, I just felt like I was trapped in a king tide. And every time I tried to take one stroke of my arm to swim towards the shore, it was like another wave would just smash me back out. And I just felt like I was drowning. And I didn't know if I'd ever get back to shore, but I did. And I had locked myself away for 6 weeks because I was in a really dark place. And I did think about drinking again at that time. And I did a lot of praying and a lot of soul searching and a lot of alone time. And as we were talking about before, I was always the person that everyone else went to for support. And I've been a counsellor for 15 years now, and a community leader and a leader in other organisations. And in my darkest time, nobody really had a clue what I was going through. And there was one person outside my family that reached out to see if I was okay. And that was really soul destroying. The loneliness from my past because I've always felt lonely. I don't today, but the loneliness was a massive trigger for me, and feeling like I had no one and I had no support. Anyway, I dragged myself out after those 6 weeks, and I went to a women's conference, and I heard 3 people sharing their stories, and they'd been through lots of trauma. And I thought, if they can get up and share their story, it made me just had this flash of all these things, you know, that I'd overcome. And I thought, goodness, you know, I'm actually am really resilient, and I have a lot of hope to share a lot of people. And I thought, if they can do that, I can get up and share all my stories, and I can gather people together that I know that are also really resilient humans, and together maybe we can help change the Sunshine Coast, maybe Australia, and maybe the world. It's a big dream. So that is when Stories of Hope began. So I started hosting these free community events for anyone in the community that just wanted to come along and find some connection and some hope. And I'd have a man and a woman share their story of all different topics, all different ages, but they had to have been coming out the other side and walking that road of recovery, because that's the true hope, somebody who's become a victor over their circumstances. So we've had many, many speakers over the years, and the 3 books have come out of that. And I have it's the most amazing purpose today. And the 2 things that we need to be able to live and live happily are connection and a purpose. And today I've found both those things, and I just feel really, really blessed, Ron, and to be connecting up with you and all these people that I've met since the launch of my last book, and John Kellick.
Mm-hmm.
Love you, John, if you're watching.
You will be.
And yeah, just so great to be in a tribe of people that have all suffered like we've suffered, but who are all insistent on coming out the other side and helping each other, giving each other a hand up.
Yes.
So they can do it too. There's just something so amazing about that. And every person that I've had share its Stories of Hope, and I would say the same thing. If they've said if they had to go through all the pain that they went through again for the purpose that they have today, they would. And I'd have to say that the joy that I found in my purpose and in being able to help bring hope and rebuild other people's lives has far outweighed the pain that I've been through.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. It's true. You've got to have purpose.
Yeah.
I say to people all the time, if you've got no purpose, what are you doing? If you haven't got a destination, where are you going? If you haven't got a plan, what are you doing? It's just so important. And, you know, it's so nice to actually hear your story in a beautiful, compassionate, loving, empathetic way, that all the stuff you talked about is relatable to my story. The circumstances are different, but the feelings are exactly the same.
Yeah, that's it.
Feelings are, and that's what everyone misses. They miss the fact of the feeling alone. I felt like I was dropped off on the wrong planet.
Yeah.
Little kid, I'd lay in my bedroom and think, maybe, you know, in my imagination, maybe the stork dropped me off at the wrong place.
Oh, no, I know. Yeah.
This is not my, you know, that, you know, this is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife. You know, that song, Talking Heads.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that song comes into my brain. It's like, this is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful life. And, and yet we found a way out. And it's resilience, and it is resilience. But I also believe it's a divine intervention from a God that I don't understand.
Yeah.
The longer I've been around, the less I understand my higher power. All I know that he loves me, understands me, and forgives me. And he's put us here today for a purpose. And I love the word purpose. Not many people use it.
Don't they? I use it all the time.
Not many people use the word purpose.
Maybe they haven't, maybe a lot of people haven't found their purpose.
Exactly. I was going to say the reason we don't use words is because we don't know what they mean.
Yeah.
I mean, not in a Wikipedia style of what they mean in here, because in here, because, you know, like yourself, you know, I help people and I have a program that I help people. And I say to most people who are addict, alcoholic, and that's a really broad spectrum. They've got a heart of gold and a head of spaghetti. And where we have to have, what I say we have to do to you is get the spaghetti unraveled so we have a connection between your head and your heart, which,
Yeah.
which I call the soul train.
Yeah,
That's what
I
the
love
soul
that.
train is. So stop listening to your head, start listening to your heart. Believe that there's a reason you're alive today, because you've been trying to kill yourself for so many years and you haven't been able to succeed no matter how hard you tried. So there has to be a purpose. There has to be.
Yeah,
It doesn't
that's
make
right.
any sense, you know. And I love the victor, not victim. I've never heard that before. I'm going to steal that one.
Really? Yeah, somebody else said that to me too. I haven't heard that before. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
you steal it, you go for it.
I am the king of one-liners, you know. I'm actually going to write a book on one-liners.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just because I have
Put a
so
couple
many.
of mine in there then.
Yes, because see, I came into recovery in 1981, and because I was a criminal, which when you went to AA those days, they were a bit afraid of me.
Oh, were they?
I was pretty raw.
Yeah.
I swore a lot.
I saw you back in the day in the meetings, hey?
Yeah, I swore a lot. I got asked not to share at meetings. You know, because you know, what could I talk about? All I could talk about was prison and crime, because that's where I'd grown up.
Yeah.
And I swore a lot, and I had that face on, you know, don't come near me, I'll kill you, because I was so afraid,
Yeah.
so intimidated. And I love the old saying, an egomaniac with an inferiority complex.
Oh, yeah. I remember that
Remember
one.
they used to say that one?
Yes.
It was.
Well, that's exactly, you know, when I was talking about thinking people were staring at me all the time, and that's it. It's like the double whammy, isn't it?
It's the egomaniac with So I love the story, the husband, because I've got the wife who's a straighty, 180.
Yeah.
She says to me all the time, what is wrong with you? And I say, what's wrong with me? You married me. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
You think I'm crazy? You think I'm screwed up? I'm with me because I have to be. You're with me because you choose to be. You're the one that's screwed up. You know? That's a common joke in our house, you know, between me and my wife. You know?
Do you know something? I've got to tell you this bit. Because I was so volatile emotionally, like I could flip from one emotion to the other. Like I could have it could be going on 100 times a day. I had no emotional regulation whatsoever. And I'm all or nothing. So sometimes I would have these feelings in the early days when we were married and everything, that I didn't love my husband anymore. And I'd get so worried about it because I didn't feel like, you know, and love's not a feeling. That's oxytocin, the hormone that gives you the feeling. But I'd say to him, oh, I'm really worried, Marty, because I don't feel like I love you anymore. And then he would just come straight back at me, the straighty 180, and go, Kerrie, feelings aren't facts.
That's my saying.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you. And then I'd get on with it, you know, and he wasn't perturbed by that at all. But if he'd said that to me, I'd be like, oh,
Packing
no,
my
it's all over. It's all over, Red Rover.
I'm packing me bags. I'm out of here. You know? But my
Yeah,
wife doesn't take anything personal.
yeah.
It's crazy, you know, stuff that I think's a drama. She's like,
Well, because we're the masters of catastrophization, aren't we? Us addicts and alcoholics, or that's how we've lived our lives until we get sober.
Yeah. And I say to people all the time, you know, like, would you let a liar, a thief, and a cheat live in your spare bedroom? They go, no. So why do you let him live in your head?
That's great.
That's one of the biggest things I say. When I first start counselling people, I say, would you let a liar, a thief, and a cheat live in your bedroom? No. Why are you letting him live in your head? They go,
Yeah.
like, what do you mean? So what has your head told you in your active addiction? Has it told you you're unworthy, that your family's better off without you? Yes. That's not true. Ask your family. Does it tell you you're better off killing yourself? Your family better off without you? Yes. Now, if somebody else told you to kill yourself, would you hang out with that person? No. Well, why are you hanging out with this bastard?
Yeah, that's so good.
Because the disease lives in our thoughts.
Yeah.
It's not real. It's just our confused. And like you, I was an alcoholic, addict, affliction, disease, whatever you want to call it. I don't get caught up in the philosophical bullshit. All I know is that once I put a chemical in my body, I can no longer guarantee my behaviour. End of story.
Yeah, that's right.
I can drink and drug today, but I can't drink and drug and have a good life.
Yeah.
People say to me, I hate drugs, I hate alcohol. I say, mate, that's a lie. You sold your soul to it. You hated the person you became, and you hated the way it made you feel afterwards, but you actually loved it. And I say to them, you've got to admit the facts, that the reality is I sold my soul to chemicals because I was trying to depress emotions.
Yes, that's a big thing. The big number one point, isn't it, that we're making? Yeah.
Why are we okay? We had trauma. Don't get me wrong. I'm one of these guys because as I said, I got clean in 81 first, and I relapsed in 85, and I was working in rehabs in 82 and 83, and I've been working in this industry a long time, and the steps are enough. That's all you're going to need. And in 2012, I got sent to a psychiatrist from probation and parole. Really funny story, beautiful story. This lady was really nasty to me, the parole officer, and she was going to teach me a lesson, and she was going to send me because I was manipulating the system. You're really still on drugs, making me do urines. I'm 27 years clean. She was going to teach me a lesson. And she said to me, I want you to go and see our head psychiatrist. He's going to sort you out. You won't be able to lie to him. And she writes this guy's name on a piece of paper, Patrick Shannon, and his phone number. I was Patrick's sponsor 26 years before this. And
No way. Wow.
I ring Patrick up and I go, Patty, Ronnie Isherwood. Hello, mate, how are you? I said, mate, on a professional level, I've got to come and see you because parole sent me here. I said, Rockdale Parole. He goes, that bitch? He said, she's evil. And I go, yeah, come on down. So I go to his house. We have a cup of tea. We're laughing. And he said to me, you've never treated your PTSD. I said, what? He said, you've never treated your post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
He said, Ronnie, you've grown up in prisons since you were a kid. I went to prison at 17, Pentridge. I've been charged with violent crimes, not against innocent people. We're gangsters. We're shooting each other. And, I always stress that. I never harmed innocent people. I harmed people. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
And I was brought up as a criminal. My dad was a gangster. Your dad was a musician. You're a musician. My dad was a gangster. I'm a gangster. I was a gangster.
Yeah.
I'm still a gangster, but I don't do gangster things anymore. My attitude toward gangster has changed. Gangsters now putting food on the table, caring for my kids, my grandkids, my wife not being afraid of me. That's gangster.
Yeah.
You want to ask me about some of the toughest thing I've ever done? Is to be right and let my wife think that she's right and shut the hell up and just, I don't have to be right. That's gangster.
Yeah.
She just walks in the room, she's laughing, But it's true. I don't have to be right anymore.
Yeah.
I love the gift of covering. You know, I wrote down a couple of things to ask you, and I've already heard you answer them. What's your strength? Hope? Faith?
Yeah,
Or tenacity?
my strength really, I've got to be 100% honest with you. The
Yep.
thing, I wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for my faith.
Yeah, good girl.
You know, and whatever that looks like, everyone's got a different perception, you know. But I think that my thing after that is, you know, hope.
Yeah,
Wanting to spread hope, hanging on to hope,
yeah,
having hope for other people.
yeah.
Like even the words that we speak or think about other people have power.
And think, yes.
Yeah, because of the way science is, you know, and I mean, I can't explain it all in the scientific terms, but I read this, that if you think something about someone, that can actually impact them. So even the way that we think about people, but it is all in the thoughts, you know, and this is the thing that I try and talk to all my clients about is, as you mentioned, is teaching them how to capture the thought when it comes in, before it takes hold, before the catastrophization can happen. Because if we can learn to capture our thoughts the second that they come in, and then do something with them. If they're positive, we feed that, but if they're negative, we chuck them out. There's really something to learning how to do that to bring freedom and change.
You don't entertain the negative. I say to people, you don't pat a crocodile.
No.
So you don't entertain the negatives, because the negatives, they do grow, you know.
But those negatives have been the default for people for so long.
Yep.
Because they've protected them.
I'm going to say, what's our biggest deal? It's survival.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love, there's an old saying, you know, when people say, I just want to die. And I went to India, to the ashrams and all that, and seen Osha, and they used to say, if you really believe you want to die, hold your hands over your nose and your mouth and hold your breath and die. They said, you'll soon let go.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You don't really want to die. You
Yeah.
want to change the way you feel. It's that.
Well, that's so true. And in the mental health first aid training that I do, they teach this, you know, that people that do end their life, they don't really want to die. They just don't know how to live.
Yeah. And I ask people all the time this question. You can ask you, 90% of the time people commit suicide is hanging. And when they shoot themselves in the head. Why? Why don't they shoot themselves in the heart? Because they're trying to shut this up.
Right.
They're trying to disconnect their head from their heart.
Mm.
I believe that fully, you know, because I spent a lot of time in prisons and everyone used to hang themselves because of the chatter. Oh,
wow.
The guys who have hung themselves that didn't succeed, and I'd say to them, what were you trying to do? And they're trying to shut me head up.
Right.
They're trying to disconnect their head from their body.
Wow.
So that tells me that the problem was up here.
Yeah.
It wasn't always up here. It wasn't in here, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Your dreams, young lady?
Well, my dream really is, you know, it's the simple one really is for my family to, you know, all be happy and have a really happy life. And I feel so great that I've been able to break that cycle of addiction for my family. Yeah. And that's a real big thing, you know, people that get sober and get clean, something that they don't really realize, but they're actually putting a stake in the ground for their future generations. Yeah. And my kids don't have addiction problems, and my beautiful granddaughters, you know, I feel like I've broken that now after 3 or 4 generations of, you know, alcoholism and addiction. But my dream really is to impact as many people around the world with hope as possible. and to spread this Stories of Hope movement and share millions of stories, so that I'm always thinking, Ron, always about the one person that's struggling on their own.
Yep.
In all of this, I see this, touching multitudes of people's lives, but they're all one person on their own, in their living room or in their place of desperation, and they find hope and they don't end their life. They don't check out. They know that if millions of people before them have gone on to find hope, that they can too.
Yeah.
And that's why I do this.
Yep.
It's all about the ones.
Everybody asks me why I still keep doing this after all these years. I'm obligated to do it. I feel an obligation.
Yeah.
I've been given this incredible gift, freedom from self. Everybody thinks it's freedom from the drugs. The drugs were never my problem. I was my problem.
Yeah.
Freedom from self. I'm not self-absorbed. I'm not so important. I don't have to have revenge. I don't have to have, I like nice things. Don't get me wrong. I drive nice cars. I wear nice jewelry. I live in a nice home. But that are not the things that make me feel great.
Yeah.
I had a young guy I took on last year as a client. His parents rang me. I'm really looking at the time because I know you're busy. 17 years of age, 4 years on the street on ice, dying, 6'1", 40 kilos.
Wow.
He's just celebrated his first year of recovery.
Oh, if you're watching, congratulations.
He's a beautiful guy, Jack. I went down to Melbourne. His parents flew me down to Melbourne a month ago to present him with his AFL jersey because he's playing his first game of AFL after 4 years of being.
Oh, wow.
He's got a job. He's doing an apprenticeship carpenter. He's got a beautiful girlfriend, and he's a year clean at 18.
Wow.
How do you put money
at
on
18?
At 18.
They're the bonuses of recovery, walking the journey with other people and helping them become sober like us. And I guess that brings me to something that, two things that I really want to say, but that one is that you're never too young to stop. I speak to so many parents here on the Sunshine Coast and even their kids, and in a lot of the schools in Queensland, 40 to 50% of year 7 kids, it's being reported back to me by the kids, are smoking weed, which a lot of it is being laced with ice these days. And people don't know this stuff. So that needs to be addressed. These young kids need to know that I'm not too young to stop if I feel like I've got a problem. Well, you're never too young and never too old to stop and rebuild your life again. And I think the work that we do, Ron, there's no way that we could do it unless it's something that I really, really had to come to, because I had always been a people pleaser, wanted validation from other people, and it is to let go of expectations of others. Yeah. I don't feel like we can truly give unless we let go of the expectations of others. So these days I'm able to give without expecting anything, and it's a very freeing place to be. Yeah.
If you don't have any expectations, you're never disappointed.
No, that's right.
I told this young girl that years ago, and it's funny because I said it like that. And about 5 years later, she said to me, "I've never forgot what you told me." She said, "Don't put expectations on anything and you'll never be disappointed." She goes, "And I'm trying to live by that."
Yeah.
It was so nice because we say a lot of stuff and we say a lot of words to a lot of people, and then all of a sudden it comes back to us. It's like, wow. Some people tell me, like the bass guitarist out of the Hootie Gurus, Rick Grossman.
Oh yeah, I know his really close friend Dave. He's in my book.
Yeah, well, Rick's a mate of mine. He's done my podcast with me.
Oh, right.
Okay. Lovely guy.
Love to meet him.
And he tells a story 35 years ago, or 35, something like that. He walked into the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, and I was the first guy to go up and shake his hand. I didn't know who he was. I said, hi, mate, I'm Ronnie. What's your name, Rick? I said, here's my number. Keep coming back. That was 35. And he talks about it all the time. And he goes, he's 30 years clean now. And he goes, you're the first guy that ever come up to me. He said, and you're this ugly guy tattooed all over, and I was really big and solid, and I used to do a lot of training. He said, and you're really sort of like, to him, because he was a Jewish boy, grew up in a rock band, sure, he took drugs and that, but he wasn't from that world I came from. And he said, and you were so soft and gentle. He said, and I just said, remember that, like, I feel safe.
Wow.
I feel safe. He said, he's the guy, the ugly man, that, that be the most threatening person to him, was the guy that came up and put his hand out and said, keep coming back, welcome, and I think it's really important to people to understand that don't judge a book by its cover. Don't tell me about my life if you haven't walked in my shoes. And please don't look for my motivation, because you'll be wrong. You'll be wrong. If you try to work out what motivates me, unless you know me and you've known me for a long time, you'll be wrong, because my only motivation is to carry a message of hope, love, and understanding to people who still suffer. And I believe I'm obligated to do it. And not only am I obligated for it, because of my nature, I get the rewards. And if it didn't make me feel good, I wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, that's it.
You're looking for the goodness.
Yeah.
No, I'm always going to be that person who looks for that instant gratification. And the gratification these days is seeing a smile on someone's face like your own. I know what you're doing. I know how much you're helping. And, I'm part of that team now. We are part of that team. We're part of the...
Hey, I know. I love that. I love connecting up with like-minded people who want to work in a team.
Exactly.
To help others, because teamwork makes the dream work, doesn't it?
It does.
No cliche saying, but I haven't found a better one yet. So,
but I like that. That's true. Teamwork makes the dream work. It's the truth.
Yeah.
I know you've got appointments, Darren. I could talk to you for hours. I really could.
We'll have to do a take two, Ron.
Yeah, we'll do a take two. But what we'll also do is we need to catch up and have a coffee and talk about other stuff as well. There's other stuff I need to talk to you about with my publishing my book and stuff like that. So, Kerrie Atherton, thank you very much for coming on The Truth About Addiction. You've been a ray of sunshine, and you really have. It's been beautiful.
Thank you, Ron. So great to be here, and bye to everyone.
Thank you, guys.
I solemnly swear that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.